You'll confuse the child. They cut me from family like trash. Brother added, easier to pretend you don't exist. We just didn't want to confuse her with someone who doesn't really belong. It took me a second to realize what I'd heard, then another to realize who someone was. Me, Bryce, her son. The air felt suddenly thinner, sucked from my lungs as if by a vacuum. The floor under my feet, wrong, unsteady, like the world had tilted on a sickening axis. My mother, Lillian, said it like she was ordering groceries, like the sentence didn't carry the weight of an atom bomb, its fallout already scorching my insides. And next to her, William, my brother, their pride and joy, the sun king of their little universe, offered not a word of protest, just a lazy, indifferent shrug and a smirk that hit harder than any physical slap ever could. His eyes, cold and dismissive, mirrored hers. It's just easier, man, to pretend you're not part of it. Not part of it. The phrase echoed inside me, a silent, shattering scream in a sealed room. Not part of it. Not part of the family I had clung to the fringes of for 28 long years. Not part of the story they chose to tell their granddaughter, my niece Paisley. Sweet, innocent Paisley. The only person in this godforsaken house who ever said my name with genuine warmth, whose eyes lit up when I walked into a room, untainted by the carefully constructed indifference of her elders. And the proof, the irrefutable galling proof, was right there on the kitchen table, splayed out in cheerful primary colors, a school project, an innocent family tree destined for a classroom wall. At the top, Lillian and Thomas, my parents, their names neatly penned, a foundation of lies. Below them, a thick, proud branch, almost ostentatious in its prominence. William, his perfect wife Adelaide, their two smiling, oblivious children. Then, nothing. An abyss. Where my name should have been, where my own life's branch should have logically, rightfully grown, there was only stark, unforgiving white space. A careful omission. A deliberate, calculated void. It wasn't an oversight, a forgotten detail in the flurry of glue sticks and glitter. It was a decision, a cold, hard, premeditated act of familial amputation. My laugh, when it finally tore from my throat, sounded alien even to my own ears. Sharp, brittle, like shattering glass. Wow. Did I miss the vote where I got officially excommunicated? Or was it just a quiet memo circulated amongst the real family members? The silence that followed wasn't guilty, laced with a dawning horror at their own cruelty. Oh no, it was bored. Annoyed even, as if I were the one creating an awkward scene, disrupting their serene afternoon of familial bliss. My mother didn't even do me the courtesy of a glance. Her attention was suddenly riveted by a non-existent speck of dust on the countertop. It's more straightforward this way, she said again, her voice clipped, final, like she was explaining why the dinner napkins were folded into swans instead of boring rectangles. She was closing the subject, dismissing me and my pain with the same ease. Paisley doesn't need the extra confusion. Confusion? The word felt like a physical blow. My eyes darted to Paisley, hunched over the poster board, her small tongue poking out from the corner of her mouth in concentration as she carefully colored a tiny flower next to her own name. Paisley, who would launch herself at me for a hug the moment I walked through the door. Paisley, who always saved me the purple gummy bears because she knew they were my favorite. Paisley, who called me Uncle Bryce like it was the safest, most cherished word she knew. That Paisley would be confused by my presence in her own family tree? As she knows who I am, I finally managed, my voice a low, shaking growl that seemed to vibrate up from the very core of my being. The tremor in it was rage, pure and undiluted, a geyser about to blow. She knows I exist. She loves me. Still nothing for my father, Thomas. His back remained resolutely turned, a solid wall of indifference as he meticulously washed an already immaculately clean dish, the water drumming a monotonous rhythm against the porcelain, a soundtrack to my utter desolation. He was a ghost playing house, a master of disappearing in plain sight whenever true emotional courage was required. This wasn't just about a piece of garishly decorated poster board. It was about systematic, soul-crushing erasure, a quiet surgical removal of the one component of their carefully curated family image that didn't quite fit the perfect, gleaming frame. They weren't just forgetting me in that moment. They were actively, consciously rewriting the entire narrative of our shared lives. And I, Bryce, their son, their blood, was the redacted line, the inconvenient truth they'd finally, decisively edited out of existence. The phrase, the redacted line, clawed at the inside of my skull, a visceral brand seared onto my consciousness. It wasn't just words, it was a pronouncement, a life sentence of invisibility delivered with the casual apathy of a weather report. I stood there, rooted to the cheap linoleum floor of their sun-drenched kitchen, the scent of cinnamon from Mom's earlier baking suddenly cloying, almost mocking. My own mother, Lillian, had turned back to wiping down an already spotless counter, her movements brisk, efficient, as if she'd just swatted an irritating fly and was now tidying up the remains. William, my brother, the cherished one, actually had the gall to pick up his phone, a small, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips as he scrolled, utterly unfazed by the emotional carnage he'd just witnessed and participated in. He was already moving on. I was already forgotten. Again. A fresh wave of nausea roiled in my stomach. For years, I'd swallowed their casual dismissals, their not-so-subtle preferences for Will, their last-minute invitations that screamed afterthought. I'd become a connoisseur of their benign neglect, rationalizing it, minimizing it, telling myself, it wasn't personal. No, that's just how they are, I'd whisper to myself, after another forgotten birthday or another holiday, where my achievements were met with polite nods, before the conversation inevitably and enthusiastically veered back to Will's latest triumph. I'd built an entire fortress around my heart with those excuses, but this was different. This wasn't passive neglect. This was an active, deliberate campaign of erasure. The family tree was merely the public declaration of a verdict they'd passed on me long ago in the silent, unlit chambers of their hearts. My fists clenched at my sides, nails digging into my palms. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears, a furious drumbeat against the backdrop of their calculated indifference. I wanted to scream, to overturn the table laden with Paisley's innocent project, to shatter the smug complacency on their faces. But then I saw Paisley. She'd looked up from her coloring, her bright, inquisitive eyes darting between my rigid form and her grandmother's dismissive back. A small frown creased her forehead. "Uncle Bryce?" she piped up, her voice a tiny silver bell in the oppressive silence. "Where does your picture go? Did we forget to print one for you?" Before I could utter a single strangled word, Mom swooped in, all forced smiles and patronizing head pats for Paisley. "Oh, don't you worry your little head about that, sweet pea," she cooed, her voice oozing a saccharine sweetness that made my teeth ache. "Grandma will explain it all later. It's just a little grown-up muddle." She shot me a warning glance over Paisley's head, a silent command to play along, to not taint their precious grandchild with the messy reality of their cruelty. "Don't make a scene, Bryce. Don't upset Paisley." The unspoken message hung heavy in the air. My brother Will seized the opportunity to reinforce their united front. "Yeah, P," he said, ruffling her hair with a performative affection that never quite reached his eyes when directed at me. "It's just complicated. Uncle Bryce has his own stuff going on, you know? He's always off on his own adventures." He delivered this with a knowing look towards Mom, a shared smirk that solidified their alliance against me, the inconvenient, complicated outsider. The implication was clear. I was the one making things difficult, the one who didn't fit their neat, tidy narrative. The adventures he spoke of were often just me, retreating from their suffocating atmosphere, finding solace in my own company because theirs was so clearly conditional. But in their retelling, it became proof of my inherent separateness, my willful exclusion. Will's words, always off on his own adventures, dripped with that familiar, condescending tone he reserved specially for me, the tone that painted me as some flighty, unreliable misfit, while conveniently ignoring why I might seek solace elsewhere. Adventures? My adventures were often just me, nursing a lukewarm coffee in some anonymous cafe, trying to read a book while the echoes of their casual dismissals rattled in my head, or long walks through city parks, simply to breathe air that wasn't thick with unspoken judgment. But in their mouths, my self-preservation became evidence of my inherent defectiveness, the burning injustice of it, the sheer audacity of them twisting my pain into a failing on my part, finally snapped something vital within me. Paisley was still looking at me, her innocent face a canvas of confusion, waiting for an answer, for her Uncle Bryce to make sense of the sudden iciness that had descended upon her glitter and glue afternoon. For her sake, I'd tried to swallow the bile, to maintain some semblance of adult composure. But not this time. Not after being rendered a ghost on her family tree. The years of gritting my teeth, of forcing down the bitter pills of their neglect, of turning the other cheek until my own face was numb, it all reached a critical mass. My own adventures, I repeated, my voice dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the inferno raging inside. I turned my gaze from Paisley, locking eyes with Will, then Mom. Dad, predictably, was still a study in deliberate obliviousness at the sink. Is that what you call it when I'm not invited to family dinners, until the group chat is already buzzing with photos? Or when I find out about major family news, like your engagement, Will, from a random Facebook post by one of Adelaide's second cousins? Those are my adventures? A memory, sharp and unwelcome, flashed through my mind with the force of a physical blow. A Christmas Eve years ago. I was maybe 16. I'd spent weeks meticulously crafting a playlist of their favorite holiday songs, even finding obscure versions I knew Dad loved. I'd bought thoughtful, if inexpensive, gifts with my meager savings from a part-time job. I arrived at their house buzzing with a rare, fragile hope, only to find it dark. A note on the door, scrawled in Mom's rushed handwriting. Will had a last-minute opportunity for a ski trip with friends. Gone for the holidays. Leftovers in fridge. Love M&D. No call, no text. Just a locked door and leftovers. I'd sat on their cold porch steps for an hour, the carefully wrapped gifts growing damp in my hands, the cheerful carols from neighboring houses sounding like a cruel mockery. That was one of my adventures. The adventure of being utterly, completely forgotten. So, let me get this straight, I continued, the tremor in my voice now undeniable, laced with a cold fury I barely recognized as my own. I am not family enough to be included on a piece of poster board for an 8-year-old, but I'm family enough to be your on-call, unpaid IT guy, your emergency babysitter, the one who's supposed to show up with a smile and pretend none of this ever happens. Mom finally deigned to look at me, her expression hardening from bland dismissal to outright annoyance. The mask of maternal concern was slipping, revealing the impatience beneath. "Oh, Bryce, don't be so dramatic," she sighed, waving a dismissive hand as if I were a bothersome child whining for a toy. "You always have to make everything about you. It's a simple school project. Why must you turn it into a federal case?" "Make it about me?" I choked out a laugh that was more a bark of pain. "You just erased me from our family history, Lillian, and I'm the one being dramatic? You stood there and told your granddaughter, my niece, that I don't belong, that my existence would somehow confuse her. What part of that isn't about me being systematically excluded yet again?" The use of her first name felt like crossing a Rubicon, but the respect I once held for her title of Mom was rapidly disintegrating. Will leaned back in his chair then, arms crossed, the very picture of smug condescension. "Look, man," he drawled, his voice dripping with the effortless superiority of the perpetually favored. "It's not that deep. You're always so sensitive. Everyone knows you don't really, fit in here. You do your own thing, we do ours. It's just how it is." He shrugged as if explaining the immutable laws of the universe. "It's just how it is." The casual finality of his pronouncement, the way he spoke for everyone, as if my outsider status was a universally accepted truth, was like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just agreeing with Mom. He was articulating the family's unofficial, unspoken creed. Bryce is other. Bryce is expendable. It's just how it is. Will's casual, almost bored dismissal, the verbal equivalent of flicking lint off his expensive sweater, was the spark that finally ignited the inferno I'd been wrestling to contain. It's just how it is. As if my pain, my very existence, was an immutable, uninteresting fact of nature, like gravity or the changing of the seasons. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it, the lifetime of dismissals packed into that one lazy shrug, finally shattered the last vestiges of my composure. For years, I'd been the family's emotional shock absorber, silently soaking up their indifference, their casual cruelty, their blatant favoritism. But there's only so much poison a system can absorb before it starts to corrode from within. A red mist descended over my vision. The carefully constructed dam of restraint I'd maintained for Paisley's sake didn't just crack. It exploded. I shot up from my chair, the legs screeching a violent protest against the linoleum before the chair itself crashed backward, slamming into the wall with a sickening thud that finally made Dad flinch at the sink. Paisley gasped, her eyes wide and frightened, a small wounded animal caught in the crossfire. A fresh pang of guilt lanced through me for scaring her, but it was instantly consumed by the tidal wave of incandescent rage that had been building for nearly 3 decades. Ah, how it is! I spat the words out, my voice raw, unrecognizable, vibrating with a fury that shook my entire frame. No, Will. No, Lillian. This isn't just how it is. This is how you've chosen for it to be. This is the world you've built, brick by painstaking brick of indifference and contempt. You think I don't fit in? I jabbed a trembling finger towards the offensive poster board, the cheerful colors now looking like a grotesque mockery. I don't fit into this? This sanitized, airbrushed lie you call a family? This exclusive club where the price of admission is blind adoration for the golden child and complete erasure for anyone else who doesn't perfectly reflect your curated image? My voice escalated with every word, no longer caring who heard, no longer caring about making a scene. The scene had been made for me, by them, years ago. You want to know about my own thing, Will? My adventures? My own thing was learning to parent myself, because my actual parents were too busy polishing your halo. My adventures were figuring out how to navigate birthdays, where I was an afterthought, graduations where my own mother couldn't be bothered to show up because it clashed with her spa day, Christmases where my presence was tolerated rather than celebrated. You sit there so smug, so certain of your place, while I've spent my entire life feeling like a damn ghost in my own home. Lillian's face had gone from annoyed to a mottled, furious red. Bryce! How dare you, she shrieked, finally abandoning her pretense of calm. In front of Paisley! If you're going to speak like that with such venom, then you can just get out. Her voice cracked, not with remorse, but with outrage at my audacity to disrupt her perfectly ordered world with the messy truth of my feelings. Get out? I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that seemed to suck all the air from the room. Oh, I'm going. Don't you worry about that. But let me make one thing perfectly clear before I do. I took a step towards them, my whole body thrumming with adrenaline. Dad had finally turned from the sink, his face a mask of stunned disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend this mutiny from his usually docile, invisible son. Good. Let him see. Let them all see. You keep cutting me out. You keep treating me like I'm nothing, like I'm subhuman, like my only purpose is to fill the empty spaces when you deign to notice me. Fine. Have it your way. Erase me completely. But don't you dare. And here my voice dropped to a lethal whisper, each word laden with years of suppressed pain. Don't you dare come crying to me when your perfect, precious little world starts to fall apart around your ears. Because when it does, and believe me, it will, I won't be here to pick up the pieces. I won't be your convenient scapegoat, your free labor, or your emotional dumpster anymore. I stared them down, one by one, Lillian sputtering with impotent rage. Will, his smirk finally wiped from his face, replaced by a flicker of something that might have been shock, or maybe just annoyance, that his afternoon had been ruined. Dad, just standing there, slack-jawed, finally looking like he understood the magnitude of what was happening, or perhaps just bewildered by the unfamiliar sound of my uncensored voice. Paisley had started to cry softly, her small shoulders shaking, and that was my undoing. Without another word, I spun on my heel, snatched my jacket from the back of a nearby chair, and strode towards the door. The silence behind me was deafening, a vacuum where their shockwaves pulsed. I didn't look back. I yanked the door open and slammed it shut behind me with a violence that rattled the windows, a satisfying punctuation mark to my declaration of independence. I heard Lillian scream my name, a shrill, desperate sound. But I was already halfway down the driveway, the gravel crunching under my feet like the bones of my shattered past. Freedom, bitter and terrifying, tasted like metal on my tongue. The slam of my car door felt final, like punctuation on a sentence that had taken a lifetime to write. I sat in silence, keys in my lap, heart pounding with something that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite rage, just clarity, cold, immovable clarity. Then my phone buzzed. Mom, you made your choice. Don't ask me for anything again. I stared at the screen, a bitter smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. My choice? Will chimed in next. Overreacting, dude. Grow up. Grow up? I'd been grown since 15, parenting myself while they fawned over their golden boy. So I disappeared. Not blocked, just gone. Ghosted. No replies, no calls. Let them feel the absence. Let them squirm inside the silence where my obedience used to live. Thomas, my father, sent a thumbs up emoji after a week. Classic. Mom tried once, 2 rings, then quiet. Will did nothing, save for posting a cringe-inducing family is everything meme and tagging everyone but me. But see, here's what they forgot. Their beloved side hustle, their barely functioning online boutique of overpriced candles and metaphysical junk. It ran because of me, their invisible IT mule. I built the website, ran the email, managed updates, cleaned their devices, designed their ugly brochures. And after they erased me from the family tree, I simply stopped. Error messages crept in. Customer payments bounced. Product pages vanished. The back end crumbled like wet plaster. Dad called, panic in his voice about something wrong with the damn system. Ignored. Mom texted, something about unexplainable bugs and losing customers. Unread. Will, silent, clueless. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd try fixing it. Spoiler, he didn't. The unraveling began in slow, satisfying waves. Then came the begging. Mom again, this time not cold, but clipped with frustration. The site is completely broken. Your father can't log into anything. Why are you ignoring us? I answered, flat and emotionless. You said I wasn't family, Lillian. Ask William. Click. Will, grow up. Fix this. Ignored. Adelaide, of course, took her turn. A saccharine DM on Instagram. Bryce, please and for Paisley's sake. Her ballet depends on this income. They used her, like always. I replied with silence. Then the real fun started. Their payment processor froze them out. Their emails bounced. Regular customers started contacting me. My number still listed on the emergency contact page. Not involved anymore, I replied. Contact the owners. Then William got proactive. Tried changing admin access. One day later, system lockdown. Another email. Account flagged for suspicious activity. I nearly spit coffee from laughing. Then came the late-night escalation. A pounding at my door. I checked the peephole. Will. Fuming. Face red. Eyes wild. I opened the door just a crack. Chain still on. What do you want, Will? He shoved the door. You're destroying everything. You're ruining Paisley's life, you selfish prick. I held firm. You're doing that just fine without me. He slammed again, harder. Hey, you think this is a joke? Leave, or I call the cops. Another shove. You owe us, he barked. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done? I snapped. Except take? Except erase me from your picture-perfect story? He swore. Something low, ugly. I slammed the door in his face and locked every bolt. Behind it, I stood still. Not shaking, not scared, just done. Because this wasn't family. This was rot, and I had finally stopped feeding it. The silence after William stormed off wasn't peaceful. It was scorched earth. But for once, I didn't flinch, didn't brace for the next demand or guilt trip. I just stood in that stillness, breathing, really breathing. And the world, surprisingly, didn't end without me holding theirs together. Over the next few weeks, news of their unraveling drifted in like static from a distant radio. Garbled, pathetic, and weirdly satisfying. My cousin Arya called, flustered, to report that Mom had become a fixture at church coffee hours, wailing about her ungrateful son who'd sabotaged everything. No mention of the erasure, the years of gaslighting, the family tree with my name, surgically removed. Just the same tired narrative. Bryce, the betrayer. The call started then. Unfamiliar numbers at odd hours. Lillian's voice brittle and trembling, barely recognizable beneath the panic. One night, Bryce, please. We're losing the house. We were wrong. So wrong. We see it now. Please. Another. Empty threats that collapsed into breathless sobs. Even Thomas, the statue of passive detachment, broke his silence. A voicemail, rambling, accusatory, somehow still centered on their suffering. After all we've provided, he croaked. The lack of irony was almost poetic. Will tried to get a loan, denied, credit in ruins. Adelaide? Still DMing. Still playing the Paisley misses you card like it was currency. Then came the envelope. Thick, heavy. My name scrawled across it in Mom's shaky cursive. Inside, pages of handwritten appeals. Apologies masquerading as guilt. Promises laced with conditions. Even vague offers of money if I'd just be the bigger person. I didn't read past the first paragraph. I didn't need to. Their definition of family was a contract written in invisible ink, visible only when you bled for them. I stood by the window, envelope in hand. Outside, the city pulsed, uncaring. I thought of Paisley, a flicker of ache for a child caught in the wreckage of adults who never learned. But I wasn't her shield. I wasn't anyone's. I tore the letter to ribbons and let it fall. One-sided loyalty shredded like confetti. Then I blocked every number I didn't recognize. Again. They'd stop calling eventually, and when they did, the silence they once forced on me would be theirs to carry. Because I wasn't coming back. The absence they created was now permanent. Their lives untethered from mine, their chaos, and no longer my concern. And me? I had peace, at last. Not loud, not showy, just mine.